Well, from Alanis Morissette to Paul McCartney, the former Beatle has mounted a legal battle to get back rights to some of the songs he co-wrote and wrote with John Lennon. Here's the story. And our editor-at-large, Craig Peters, was, I wouldn't call it dancing, but you were certainly nodding your head and tapping your feet to those old tunes.
Rock and roll, baby.
Tell me, Craig, just go back in time for a little bit and tell me, how did the Beatles lose control of their own music in the first place?
Well, prior to the Beatles, no one really cared about who owned the catalogs because studio musicians came in and played songs that the producers told them to do. Then came the Beatles, who had a very smart manager by the name of Brian Epstein, and he controlled everything and did it very well. He died in 1967 at the age of 32 years old, and the Beatles started to devolve at that time. They were going bankrupt. In 1969, the Beatles formed something called Apple Corp. Apple, the real Apple, the first Apple. And that was going down the tube. So on Mick Jagger's advice, they hired a New York manager called Alan Klein, who was pretty much a swindler. And everything kind of went downhill from there, and whatever peace, love, and brown rice was left with the Beatles devolved into chaos, loathing, and lawsuits that ended with Michael Jackson a number of years ago selling his 50% share in the Lennon-McCartney catalog to Sony for some $750 million, and it's just been a nightmare.
And this isn't the only case of people struggling to get a hold of their own copyright, having sold them on. You know, you've been involved with the music industry a long time. Tell us about some other examples. The Byrds, Mamas and Papas?
The Byrds, the Mamas and the Papas, Love. Remember all of these bands, like my old friend Arthur Lee, may he rest in peace. You know, when they first went into the studio, they didn't have any money, so they gave away their rights. In some instances, they gave them a car or maybe a free place to live for a few weeks. And they had been playing in garages and they needed money. So these young bands, they were 18 to 23 years old, they would take anything. And little did they know that rock and roll would boom into a multi-billion-dollar global business. So big and so complex that what's going on with this McCartney suit, you're actually looking at two sets of laws, because the copyright laws are different. You got one set in the UK and another set in the USA, and they don't jibe. So once again, the lawyers are going to be taking control of this situation, and unfortunately, it's no longer just rock and roll. It's big business, and it can get ugly.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, Craig Peters in Paris, thank you very much for that.